And as we're getting settled in, I'd like to ask you for a favor. The Center for Rural Development really would like to highlight some of the success stories that you've heard about today. Probably some that you have not heard about that we're overlooking. If you know of any good broadband success stories within your community, if you could get that information to us, we would certainly appreciate it. We want to make sure that people that are out there doing good work are recognized and appreciated, and you could help us make that happen. You know, it's kind of hard to monitor 45 counties at a time, and so we need your eyes and ears out there to help us do that. So I told these guys I was going to grill them, and they weren't afraid of me, so now they've got me buffaloed. I'm a little scared of them. I'd like to introduce you to our last mile panel. We've got Keith Gabbard. We've got Daryl Maynard, David Thacker, and Scott Shapiro. And I'm going to let them talk about themselves and about their company. So gentlemen, starting with Keith, and we'll just take it right down the line. What I'd like you to do is to tell us about your system, the number of subscribers you have, the area of coverage, and if you wouldn't mind, kind of let us know what speeds you have available on your respective systems.
So I'm Keith Gabbard, and I work with People's Rural Telephone Cooperative, or PRTC as we like to call ourselves. We are a nonprofit cooperative, been in business since 1950, and we serve Jackson and Alsea County, all of those counties. That's been our core service area for a long, long time, until just the last year or so. We provide broadband, TV, and voice. And then along with David's company, we are 20% owner of the EKN network that we've talked about a lot today, or the Appalachian Wireless with the EKN network. So we just recently we completed, actually in 2014, an all-fiber network. So we've replaced all our coax and our copper with fiber optics, and we can provide up to a gigabit to every single home and business in both counties. Within the last year and a half, we've also built some fiber out into Manchester and Debatable, so we're serving portions of Lee County and Clay County as well. But we have about a little over 6,000 customers, 6,200, I believe, and it depends on which service you're talking about. But that of some service, we got about 6,200, and our speeds are up to a gig. Our minimum is 25 up and down, and then we'll go up to 100, 500 and a gig. And I think that's all you wanted me to tell. Is that right, Larry?
For right now, yeah.
Okay. All right, David.
David?
I'm David Thacker with Thacker Grigsby Communications. We also have a subsidiary, TVS Cable. Thacker Grigsby's been incorporated since 1956. TVS Cable since 1966. We actually merged the two companies in 2006. We had Thacker Grigsby doing voice, TVS Cable doing video. Both had got into internet kind of in the early 2000s, and we overlapped one another in a lot of areas, so we actually ended up just, Thacker Grigsby purchased TVS Cable, so now TVS is a subsidiary of Thacker Grigsby. We have, between the two companies, so most of the numbers I speak about here and when I talk about our plant and so forth, it's between the two companies, not Thacker Grigsby specific, but we have 10,000 broadband subs, about 8,000 video subs, and 6,500 voice subs. Thacker Grigsby, we serve Knott, Breathitt counties. We do touch into Floyd and Perry with Thacker Grigsby. TVS Cable is mostly Perry and Letcher. Do serve a small part in Floyd and Leslie. Unlike Keith here, we're not 100% fiber to the home. We still have some coax and copper facilities out there, but we have 61% of actually our Thacker Grigsby ILEC facilities built in fiber to the home. We've already secured a loan for the rest of that area, so it's a 4-year plan, and we'll have all of our ILEC facility finished with fiber to the home. And in any of our fiber to the home areas, we do offer 1 gig speed, same as Keith offers. Outside of our ILEC territory, we did a stimulus project in Breathitt County. Actually passed 1,756 homes with that project that were previously unserved homes. And since then, we have built an additional 2,200 homes from that. That was all unserved before, prior to us coming there. On our cable side, TVS, we've built downtown Hazard here. This area right here actually is a gigabit area. We do downtown Whitesburg, the Craft Colony community. We recently built Roxana over in Letcher County, which actually was a completely unserved area, had no broadband. We were able to work out a deal there with the local cable company, and then that same cable company, we've recently been able to work out a deal to take over the Line Fork and Halley area, and in the process of building it all in fiber to the home right now. So, staying on the cable side, we're one of the first people to actually deploy a virtualized CMTS platform. We're doing DOCSIS 3.1, also doing what they call remote PHY technology, and actually going to allow us to be able to do 1 gigabit speeds on our coax, not even having to have fiber. Right now, we have a lot of fiber out to these node locations, kind of out to the edge, but we're taking coax on into the homes.
Okay.
This will actually be able to allow us to take gigabit speed all the way into the homes. We've got it in some markets already and been testing it and had good results with it. Not necessarily ready to start offering it everywhere yet, but getting real close.
Okay.
One other thing I was going to hit on that we are doing, they mentioned middle mile earlier, and we're actually working on extending our middle mile part of the network. We are co-locating in a data center in Ashburn, Virginia right now. We've actually moved all of our routing equipment out to the edge. We're doing direct peering with Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Akamai, and those folks. We're actually getting a presence on the internet exchange. So we're kind of taking the middle people out, getting all the way out on the edge, and cutting down on the latency.
Cutting down on those hops, huh?
Cutting down on the hops, that's exactly right.
Daryl?
My name's Daryl Maynard. I'm with Eastern Telephone and Technologies out of Pike County. And unlike Keith and David here, I'm a CLEC, which is a competitive local exchange carrier. And we have been in business since 1985. We've predominantly have been in the commercial side of the business and reselling other services, especially back in the 80s with Bell South and some others. I've been involved with other telcos before and bringing some broadband in the 80s or in the 90s and the 2000. In the last 5 years, we've been providing a commercial accounts, commercial broadband in about 6 communities through Pike County, Letcher County, and a few others. We currently offer 2 services. We offer our symmetrical broadband, and it's fiber-fed, as well as local service to these commercial accounts. In addition, we offer several types of services, including the DIA, Direct Internet Act services, by working with companies like Keith and EKN and the rest of them to resell services in certain communities. I've been working with Larry and Lonnie for quite a while, promoting broadband throughout Eastern Kentucky. I know I've met with several already. Lonnie and Judge Anderson and several others know that one of my passions is to try to bring broadband. And I can't tell you how proud I am of Keith and David over here, especially. He hasn't said anything about his price for his gigabit service, but his residential service, if you want to live in Owsley and Jackson County, is only $99 a month for a gigabit up and down. So that is what I'm working with on our company. We're working with small communities to try to help promote broadband there, especially the ones that live in the that are located in the non-rural telcos places, some of the larger commercial companies that haven't been actually serving those areas. So that's our focus, and that's going to maintain our focus until we see affordable broadband, gigabit $99 a month everywhere in Eastern Kentucky.
Excellent. When you get it down to 1995, call me. That's what they want, 1995, yeah. Scott, you're the outsider in this group. Talk to us.
And the only one with a tie. What's going on there? Thanks for having me here. So my name is Scott Shapiro. I work with Metronet. Metronet is a company that provides pure fiber to the home, fiber to the premises. It's been doing that since 2004. The company was founded in Evansville, Indiana. Started building in smaller communities in Indiana, outside Chicago. Eventually, it's now in 50 communities, providing service across 7 states. And it's expanding rapidly, always looking for new communities in which to build. I personally got involved with Metronet. I worked with Mayor Gray in Lexington on the gigabit project there. We're looking for, how many folks here are from city communities that are looking for faster internet speeds? All right, a few. So was in your boat. We announced that project in 2014, trying to figure out how to accomplish that, whether it was building it ourselves or attracting private company or trying to convince the incumbent to do it. So we eventually settled on Metronet, and now Metronet is spending about between $70 and $100 million to build out fiber to the home network in Lexington. So citywide, many of you know Lexington has an urban services boundary, so hems in development and creates a good bit of density. That was super attractive to Metronet. So they are doing fiber to the home throughout the city. They are looking for other cities. Typically, they look for density, but they do have an affinity for Kentucky in general. Once they pick a community, and this has happened in other areas outside Kentucky as well, they look for communities that surround that city as well. So in Lexington, they are looking at some of the surrounding towns and cities as well, and that's typically the pattern that they follow.
Gentlemen, welcome, and we thank you for being in business. I mean, without you folks and some others like you in the area, we would have nothing. So you're doing a bang-up job, and we do appreciate it. David, we're going to start with you for this question. Let's talk about take rates that you're experiencing. I know that's a big issue for some companies. You build it, and maybe they don't come as quick as you hoped they would. And also talk about, those people that do take your service. What kind of speeds do you think that is your best seller?
As far as take rates go, Larry, I think in the last couple of years, really, we talk about the digital divide and so forth. I thought Jared had a good point mentioned about it kind of in the last 5 years, seeing the speeds have increased, prices have come down, and that's happened a lot in our industry, and I think that's helped close a lot of that digital divide. I mean, we've seen a big increase in our take rates in the last couple of years compared to the previous years. A lot of people adopting more broadband. Like I said, I think we're still tail behind the urban areas and all those numbers, but I think that gap is closing. As far as what speed most people are taking, we still have a lot of people on lower speeds because we do have a kind of a poor demographic here, older demographic, and a lot of times they want that 1995 package. They don't really care about the speed. But in the last couple of years, actually, our 25 meg and higher packages have really been the ones that people have been taking the most of. So that's been the real growth for the last probably 2 years.
Good. Darryl? You?
Currently, we just provide services commercially and some of the smaller communities throughout the area. So we're not really in the rural areas of eastern Kentucky, although we're in the rural towns. So our current take rate usually is between 30 and 40% when we go into a small town. And really, most of those are either served, I'm just going to say it, we're served by AT&T or Windstream because all of the other ILECs, the rural ones, have really covered it well, so there's no sense in us even bother going and competing in those areas. Part of the challenges that we have when we're going in there, especially on the commercial side with some of these small businesses, are the fact that they don't understand the value proposition of a fiber-fed symmetrical product. In other words, they're still using a DSL or a cable modem and trying to do business over it. And their needs may not be quite as high, but a lot of times it's the reliability factors going along with it, because the incumbents may have old copper in there and their services aren't very reliable. So when we go in there, it's sort of hard to overcome the fact that it's the price thing. They don't understand the value. So basically, the way we make a sale, there's three things. One is a friend or a family member has recommended us, which they've experienced it, so they don't have to be re-educated on it. Sometimes we have to make several pre-purchase visits just to explain the product, what it means by symmetrical, what it means about 5 nines reliability, all of the elements that they're maybe missing in their current service provider. Sometimes we actually have to install an actual trial for them before they really understand, because they really don't need a lot of the broadband. You know, we're selling probably 20 meg to 30 meg mostly, not very much. But when it's a lot faster ping times and much more reliable, it seems like you're overcoming all of those issues. They're finally getting something that's reliable mostly. So.
Yeah, Scott?
Sure. So I don't think I can publicly talk about our take rates, but they're high enough such that we're doing well. I will say that we, in some towns and cities where there's obviously a big variation between gigabit speeds, or if someone just buys 250 megabits per second, if there's a big difference between that and what the incumbents provide, that's obviously a big selling point for MetroNet. In other cities, though, I think what MetroNet does is they don't simply rely on the faster speeds and the symmetrical availability of up and down. They also put a big emphasis on customer service. So that's something that we've heard from customers, that there's something that they would hope happen more among their telecommunications providers. So MetroNet spends an enormous amount of energy internally on their customer service, reaction times, making sure that questions are answered rapidly, and with knowledgeable, friendly folks, solving problems immediately. So those are sort of the two ways that MetroNet approaches customers.
And if you need some teleworkers to do that work, I can hook you up.
All right.
What about you, Keith?
Well, for us, I think the most popular tier that people are getting is 50 meg, our second tier. That's the most popular we sell. It and the 25 are by far the most popular, because typically, as David said, a lot of them want the cheapest. You know that as well as I do. They all want it cheaper and faster. We all do. I think it's interesting, though, as we move into the CLEC area, we have more and more people taking a gig, probably because we're selling more to businesses than residents in the CLEC area. But we got as many people in the CLEC area. We only passed 1,500 people. We got as many people taking a gig there as is in our ILEC area, with 5 times the number of things passed. So it's interesting that as we go into CLEC and compete, that gig becomes more desirable, more important, or something. But maybe we're just doing a better job selling it. Could be that too. But in our ILEC area, our number continues to grow. It's at about number of homes passed. It's at about 62%. But if you base it on number of customers, 76% of our customers have our broadband.
Excellent.
And I think, we'd like it to be 100, but I think that's pretty decent compared to other places. At one time, it wasn't. It's continued to grow over the years.
That's still pretty good, especially for our area. So if you have any questions, come up to the microphone and please have some questions for these guys. They came a long way to sit in front of you and answer these questions like, my neighbor down the road can get gigabit internet, but I can't get anything. Why is that? That's a good question to ask somebody. So I've got some questions up here that I'll throw at these guys. But again, just kind of think of some questions. If you have one, stand up at the mic and we'll get to you as quickly as we can.
Hey, Larry. Actually, I have an answer for Keith over here on why they're selling a gigabit for in the CLEC areas for $100. Because the competition is selling 50 meg for $70. So why wouldn't you spend another 30 to get a gig, right? So that's why you're selling the gig. They're used to paying $70 for it anyways.
You're onto something, Keith.
Yeah. Could be.
So I do want to change tack here just a little bit. What I'd like for you guys, and just take it as it comes. We're not asking anybody specifically about this, just for those who feel comfortable. But I would like you to talk about your staffing, the skill sets that your employees have, and I am curious as to whether or not you're having any kind of issues finding local skilled workers. So whoever wants to field it.
Well, I'll go first. Actually, the most important skill set for our staffing is customer service, basically like what Scott said, coming from a previous employment where I managed about 30,000 lines, and we had more customer service employees than we did, technical staff. So that was pretty important to us. But today, especially what I'm finding out here in the technology world, what we're needing mostly and what we try to look for is somebody that is in the IP packet switching world. They understand IP packet switching, which is basically Cisco network routing. And it's not necessarily Cisco anymore. There's a lot of other routers out there, but at least having a fundamental understanding of how to work in a router, because that's probably 80% of broadband today is working in a router and understanding IP addresses and IP packet switching.
So are you seeing people coming out of our local high schools and community colleges prepared to go work for you?
They've touched on it, but they don't have enough skill sets to do it. I think what I've seen, they've left most of that education to some of the certification programs with the manufacturers to teach them about it, because most of our guys have gone to CNA training, Cisco training to get their IP packet switching. I know Tristan and the guys from PMC understand all about that, and they've had to go get theirs probably outside of general education to learn that.
I'd say you won't just find anybody walking up the street that can do that sort of thing, but there are certainly people in our counties that can do it. And I can remember when we first got in the fiber business, and just splicing fiber was this huge ordeal, the cost and the tech and the expertise. And we had to send some of our people to Texas A&M to learn how to splice fiber because we couldn't find anywhere close. That's all changed. There's plenty of places to train you now, but we've been doing it long enough. We train our own people now, but and like as an example, our IT director at our office, he grew up in Jackson County, got his degree from EKU, and he's amazing. But then he met this young lady, and she taught school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they decided to move down there and start a family. So we're like, heck, we're providing this capability for all this work from home stuff. We'll just let you work from home in Chattanooga. You can stay our IT manager. So he's been that for about 4 years, and it works fine. But he's a local guy, but he lives in another state.
So in Lexington, we anticipated a need for more folks who work with fiber. So the mayor's workforce development folks worked with the Urban League to develop a program to start training folks in anticipation of MetroNet coming to town. That was just a small program that got up and running. I noticed in one of the earlier presentations you were doing something similar at Hazard Community College. Looks like a great program.
Yeah, you guys were probably looking through the woodwork for cable splicers, weren't you? Fiber splicers. You know, one thing that the center, I think we understand, but I would like you guys to just hit on it for a minute, is, you know, we've got areas that have got maybe 2 or 3 households up a holler, about 6 miles up. You know, talk about the cost proposition, the business model of trying to ever service those few people in those remote areas. Is there any way to do it from a business end, or is that just going to be up to economic development folks and community development?
I'll give you an answer that we had a meeting once with an attorney, and everybody asked the question. He said, it depends. So I'm going to give you his answer. It depends on what county you live in, because if you live in Jackson or Owsley County, every single home or business can get it no matter what holler you live in. If you live in another county, it might not be. And some of that depends on some of the grant opportunities that are out there that, you know, David talked about getting a grant and serving Barbeque County. We had some grant funds. Our project for Jackson Owsley was a $50 million project. 60% of that was loan, 30% grant, and 10% our own capital. But we're actively applying for grants or grant loan combinations right now for several counties, edging out around the counties we serve. We can't really make a business case for providing fiber. All we're going to do in the future is fiber to the premise. That's what we feel like needs to be done to provide the service that people need. And we can't make a business case just doing it all with our capital, but if we have some help, we think we can, and we are actively pursuing that. And we're certainly not the only company doing that. There's plenty of other co-ops or family-owned companies, or even cities or counties or whatever. But I think that's sort of in a roundabout way answers your question. There are ways to do it, but most of the time you need some help where a normal business case wouldn't make it happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think we're like Keith, we're kind of going in for some of this reconnect money as well. Programs like that, it takes those programs to be able to get people service in some of these areas. Like Barbeque County would not have been feasible to do without the stimulus project. Now, from that, like I said, we've been able to keep building on that because we've got a pretty good customer base in what we were able to build with the stimulus project. And we've done, in kind of like Keith, also in our ILEC territory there in Knott County, every single home is going to have access to fiber. And we have a few areas like I mentioned Roxana there earlier. That was an area where we actually were able to work with Appalachian Wireless to build some fiber out to a cell tower that they needed connectivity to, and we were able to serve a lot of homes and build off that as well. We built probably 3 miles of that was for the cell site, and then about 4 more miles was fiber we built on out to customers there. So there's different opportunities that present themselves. Like Keith said, it depends. Every case is different.
Well, something I forgot to say, I think the big thing about it is partnering. Find somebody to partner with. Whether it's the federal government or the state government, or Kentucky Wired, even we have a partnership with them where we built some of the laterals, and we've used some of that money to provide service to other people in addition to that. There's just, we've partnered with even EKN, the company we're part owner of, just like David said. I guess you have to be a little creative to figure out ways to find the money to make these things happen, and we're trying to do that as best we can. But we certainly don't want to stick our neck out and lose a lot of money doing it. But we if we can manage to break even or make a little and improve the people's lives in Eastern Kentucky, that's part of what we're about.
Yeah, and I think kind of like he said, there's a service provider, you feel an obligation to try to serve as many people. Even if you got the opportunity to even break even, Halley Line Fork area, there's an area that I don't know that we'll ever, might not ever even break even on what we're going to be building there. It's a lot of miles of cable for not a lot of homes passed, but it fits into our model of what we're trying to do, and we're trying to get Letcher County their service broadband everywhere we can, and that's kind of one of the little holes inside of our network that we haven't been able to serve. And we're going to build it. Like I said, we might or might not break even on it, but Dickie Nick, I take a chance.
So, and they're doing a great job, as well as the other three that are part of EKN up in Mountain Rural, Foothills, and the Gerhardt Group. They are all doing great jobs and taking great strides to fill in those gaps. But you still have, out of all the SOAR counties, especially in eastern Kentucky, a great percentage, almost 50% or more, that are just serviced by some of the major corporations, and they are not going to invest any of their capital today because it's a long investment. It's a 30-year payback for fiber to the home. I know exactly what kind of loans they got and how it works, and the USDA is here to help partner with it, and it's still difficult to make it work without that. And so you won't find the Wall Street companies being tied down to a restrictive USDA grant or loan for 30 years to come in and do it. And so they're actually asking for less deregulation in the state, not more. So that being said, what's going to happen in some of these smaller communities and that don't have the independent rural telcos to help solve some of this issue? You're going to have to find a MetroNet maybe that's going to spread out a little bit from Lexington. How far they go out, that's yet to be determined. Or some of these communities, small communities, are going to have to figure out the grants and loan processes on their own and create systems, much as what in Knox County, Barberville has had a system for quite a while. And I think they're selling gigabit service in Barberville, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much. Glasgow does it, as well as several other communities throughout the state. And throughout the nation, the municipals are sort of taking this in their own hands, because this is quality of life and it's economic development, and they don't want to be beholden to Wall Street to wait 20 years for capital to come in and build. So municipals can have better access to grants and loans from ARC and the USDA, and so outside of the areas of working with the private sector and the rural independents, I think that these communities have to take it upon themselves to figure out and work with and partner other competitive local carriers, like over on this end, or independents, to actually how to resolve those issues. Now, technology is part of it too, because some of the areas up in these hollers, you aren't going to be able to put fiber to the home. You're not going to make it work unless you do have a co-op that's ran really by the community and they own it and they've made that decision to do that. But if you're partnering with private sector, there's making it work is going to be a part of it, and so you may have to do a wireless product as well as fiber, some kind of hybrid stuff. So. There's a lot of, and I think the word was said by Keith over here, you got to be creative, but you can find a solution and don't settle and wait till somebody else does your broadband in your community.
That was really well said. When I was working with the city of Lexington, we joined a group, and for the folks who are here with a community who are looking for help, as Daryl says, to get creative on your own, we joined a group called Next Century Cities. You can find them online. It's just hundreds of cities and towns who are sharing information on how to figure out this broadband puzzle. Is really helpful for us in Lexington. They recently launched a guide for cities kind of like the old Google Fiber City checklist, if anyone remembers that. But it's been updated and expanded for communities to really do everything that they can to help figure this out. For private providers like Metronet, it is going to be very difficult for certain smaller towns or rural areas. Not to say it's impossible, but it is difficult, certainly. We're not the only answer, right? There are folks who bond it and build it themselves. There are other ways to go about it. But for folks like Metronet, there's a little bit of good news. So there are grant programs from the federal government, as Errol was saying. There was just a recent announcement. They had about $600 million available. Various programs. There was Chairman Pai recently announced that they're looking to spend about $20 billion over the next, I think it was 10 years, on rural broadband. I think the details of that have not yet been announced. But that should give folks a little bit of optimism that there's going to be some, if you do some of the hard work in preparing for, to do it yourselves or to attract a private entity, that there may be some support coming from the federal government.
Yeah, when you're in business, you have to make money, right?
Yeah, and something I think that I'm seeing in the news a lot with other states, Washington, Minnesota, Tennessee, our states, it's pretty focused on Kentucky Wired right now and the money that's costing. But if a state could start a small matching grant program of their own, it might just be $5, $10, $15 million total. It could encourage at least smaller companies to edge out into other areas. If you could get $500,000 or $1 million, if you'd match it, you might build a few miles of fiber to the home, and that's being successful in other states as states are starting their own broadband type program like the federal government is. It's a little less competitive when it's just within your own state. But I mean, what a lot of people don't know, Kentucky has 20 phone companies and who knows how many cable TV companies. So there's a lot of small companies out there.
Fact is,
State people, did you write that down? Good idea.
well, along with that, on the political side of things that could be done, and in Washington especially, one of the only reasons why we really don't have enough money here in the rural areas is because broadband is not yet listed as an infrastructure. They're talking about a $1 trillion infrastructure bill that's for roads and water and electric and sewer and all those kind of things. And although, it's rather new, and of course, internet started out more as a luxury, and some people still think it's maybe a little bit of luxury, but I think everybody in this room has heard how much that it's needed as an infrastructure, and we don't have a choice if you want quality of life and economic development. So I think it would be good for Eastern Kentucky to raise a voice pretty loud in trying to make sure that the word infrastructure or broadband gets put into the infrastructure definition. The traditional CDBG grants that have been given out over the years, those are for infrastructure. And if broadband was an infrastructure, those are grants that would be available to you. Because the $600 million that Scott was talking about in the USDA, you're going to have a hard time getting that currently because the FCC, in their infinite wisdom, doled out some money to some of the other incumbents, which prohibits anybody from applying for those grants in their areas if they've already received monies for it. So, they're trying to do the right thing, but they're stepping all over themselves for doing it. So
Sounds like a government operation, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I think you got a good point there, but they need to focus these programs on being able to get the money kind of in the right hands of the people that's built a lot of this and proven themselves over the years.
Exactly.
One other thing is in a lot of these grants right now, the requirement of broadband is still just 10.1. They've not changed that. So when they move the speed requirement up, that'll open up the door too in a lot of other places to be able to actually get faster speeds out in areas where they're just kind of barely got broadband now or some standards not even considered broadband, so.
And I think, we're speaking to the choir here, but, better broadband, it's not just about seeing better quality of Netflix. I mean, this is pretty important stuff for education, for our economic development. And, I mean, you got a program earlier today about teleworks. I mean, my 2 core counties have had close to 900 jobs created in the last 4 years, work-from-home jobs, and partly due to really good speeds of internet. I mean, we've had a call center move into our county with 160 jobs, partly due to really good internet speeds. And, this can really help the quality of life in our communities. I mean, we donate a gig speed to our local public libraries to help them help our community. We've got a veterans healthcare telemedicine center in our public library as a partnership between VA and Lexington and us and the library. And, there's creative things we can do to make our community a better place, but broadband is a huge component of it.
I don't think we could end on a better note than that. Does anybody have any questions for this group?
I have one more, and I'm going to shut up and sit down. I have I guess, a comment question, if you would. All of you guys have to make payroll every week, and that has an impact on the way you behave and the decisions that you make. And my question is, how would you view, any of you or all of you, Kentucky Wired? What impact would that have on your business? Would it be positive? Would it be negative? Or no impact? Thank you.
I'll go first. You want me to go first, Keith? Yeah, you go. I'll go first. It's because I'm the sort of competitive guy up here. So it's actually, I can talk more positive about it probably than some of the others, because it should help those communities. It's not going to do a whole lot for the areas that are already covered. That's the sad part. Unfortunately, you're going to find some great telcos that's done a good job, and this is not going to really, there are some things they'll probably get out of it, and it'll probably help them some, but they're doing a good job without it. But they're only a certain portion. If you look at the whole state, across the whole state, only 6% of the population, 7% of the population is actually covered by the independent rural telcos. So that means that the other are covered by the big guys. And out of that, 49% of the state is covered by the big guys in the rural areas. So there's 49% of the state that's going to be left behind without a good backbone into their areas because of the lack of those particular companies. So this is where Kentucky Wired is really going to shine, is trying to bring everybody up, not just the ones that were fortunate enough to be in a $99 area. That's good.
And from an incumbent telco, when Kentucky Wired was first mentioned 4 or 5 years ago, I mean, our first thought was, and I know we were in the minority, but we've already built fiber to both our counties. Why would we want the state to come in and overbuild us with fiber and take our customers away? Now, that's sort of changed over the years, but that was our initial thought. And frankly, nobody even knew we'd already built fiber at that time either. It's one of the reasons why I sit on these panels, is so people will actually know that there's some fiber out there. And not just by our company, but by several companies. But what we eventually did was, in time, Kentucky Wire decided, in Eastern Kentucky at least, to partner with some companies that have already built them fiber. And so through our relationship with EKM, we are furnishing the fiber for a fee to Kentucky Wired in Jackson, Owsley, and in Clay and Lee County. And we sort of use that as an opportunity to build into Clay and Lee County and start serving customers, business, and residential. And I guess the Kentucky Wired experience sort of got us started doing that. So, I guess we're trying to make lemonade out of lemons for us. Having said that, though, I do want to say that I'm not here to, it's not just all about me and our company. There's a lot of people that don't have good broadband, and if Kentucky Wired can help that, I'm certainly not against it.
Did that answer your question, by the way?
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, I would like to thank our panel, if you would.